Okay, Ron, we're back with another edition of Ask Ron. How you doing this week?
I'm great, man. Ready to go.
Okay, we got Jonathan from Edmonton,
Alberta.
Alberta.
Okay.
Says I'm up in Edmonton and I have two terms deals in the works.
Mhm.
However, I discovered that the asset protection portion of the training doesn't seem to translate to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I'm aware, we don't have land trusts, and the closest thing to an LLC in Canada is a corporation. What should Canadian students do to ensure that we are not personally guaranteeing debt and are protected against
Okay.
litigation?
You're correct. You don't have land trusts in Canada, and you do have corporations. And I swear, I think you got LLCs as well. But irregardless, you're going to need some corporations, at least one or two to do business in, one to do business in, and another one to hold properties in. This is a question you should ask your CPA actually to make sure you don't have tax issues and what they are up there, because they're totally different than they are down here. So I can't comment on that. But you are going to need entities to operate in. You don't ever guarantee debt. The entity guarantees the debt instead of you. Talk to a good attorney up in Canada. I don't want to dig any deeper into this because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Okay, we've got Craig from Florida. He's got two questions.
Now I know. Okay, what are they?
All right, how do you handle it when the seller says, "How do I know you're going to make payments to my bank?" What is the
Okay.
strategy?
It's actually right in my manual. Do you have any, to my bank. Okay, well, first of all, we don't make payments to, we do make payments to the bank. We don't make payments to the seller if there's an underlying loan. So my answer would be, do you have any reason to believe that I'm not going to make the payments? I mean, I'm here. I'm willing to pay your closing costs. I'm not sure why I'd want to buy your house if I didn't intend to make the payments on it. Do you have any reason to believe that I'm not? Wait for an answer and shut up when they don't have one. And even if they do have one, I come back to be, well, listen, if you don't think I'm going to make your payments, then you probably shouldn't sell me the house. Wouldn't you agree? That'll take the legs right off and underneath of them. And then I would say, by the way, if I'm here and I will do what I promise, can I trust you to do the same? Put it back on them.
Okay, Craig, second question. When you're paying the seller on a wrap and the seller is paying their bank payment, how do you guarantee that the seller is
I
making?
pay the bank directly. Because usually my payment is the same as their payment, so I just get them to sign a little thing at closing that I can pay the bank directly. Now, if the seller has got a big bunch of equity, in other words, I owe them a lot more than they owe me, and they insist on collecting the payment, I'm okay with that. I'm not worried about them making the underlying payment. It's them that's risking their own deal if they don't make the underlying payment. And they're risking all that equity because they're obligated to make that payment. And if they're not, they're in breach of contract and they can destroy the whole thing. So I'm not in the least bit concerned about them making the payment if, in fact, they have some equity above the loan. If they don't, I'm going to insist on making the payment, and generally do anyway. But I ain't going to kill the deal if I have to make the seller the payment. Now, of course, if this house is free and clear, obviously I'm going to make the seller the payment. There's no bank to pay. But there's a company called Escrow Serve, that's ESCROSERV.com, that will collect the payment, make the underlying payment if there is one, drop the difference in whoever's account if there is any, and give both parties a 1099 at the end of the year for a lousy $15 a month. And they do it nationwide. They do it on lease options as well as if you sell it with owner financing. So might even suggest that the seller set it up with them. Then they don't even have to collect the payment if they're doing so. And it costs $50 to set it up and $15 a month the last time I checked. But one word of caution now, if there is an underlying payment, they're not going to make that payment till about 15 days after they collect the money, which might cause that payment to be late and create a late penalty. I would get them a month ahead if I'm going to set them up. In other words, I'd give them the money way enough in advance so that 2-week waiting period can go by and that payment still can be made before the late penalty is incurred on the underlying loan. I hope you understand what I just said. I understand it clearly. All right, John.
Okay, our last two questions of the week come from Alfonso in Ohio.
Yeah.
When doing a deal where you collect a deposit, can I use that deposit to pay the closing costs?
No, you can't, Alfonso, because you're mixing buying and selling here. If I'm paying closing costs, that means I'm buying. Okay, I'm not gonna go find somebody to put in the house until I buy it. Now, there are cases where that might not be the case. If the house is vacant and you can send people out to see it, it's possible, and I've done it a few times, where you line up the buyer before you close, and then you close both of them at the same time. If you're doing that, then yes, you can have your attorney take the funds from the buyer's deposit and use them to pay the closing costs for the purchase. Of course, that's between you and your attorney. And I don't see any reason why they won't do it. But on the other hand, attorneys do things quite often that I don't understand why they do it. So that's a discussion with you and your closing agent. But yeah, you can do that. But you're not gonna, if the house is occupied, you don't have a miserable time trying to show it to a buyer. So in certain circumstances, it might work. But most of the time, I'm just going to go close on it, then go find a buyer, and then bring the money to closing. I don't know what state you're in, but frankly, raising the money to pay closing costs should not be that difficult for you. Even if you don't have it, just get somebody to put it up and give them back considerably more than you paid them when you put the tenant buyer in there.
All right. By the way, he's in Ohio.
Okay, closing costs are not bad in Ohio.
All right. His second question: before you go meet with the seller, can you find out exactly what the seller pays on their monthly mortgage and exactly how much they paid for the house?
Now, why would I want to do that to begin with? First of all, none of my business what they paid for the house. I really don't care what they paid for the house. And the mortgage money, amount of the monthly mortgage is going to come out of their mouth when we ask them, what do you owe and what's the payment? And frankly, if they won't tell us what the payment is, we're never going to go to their house anyway, because we're not going to be doing business with that seller. So you're worrying about the wrong things, okay? And what they paid for the house is moot. They bought it probably several years. I don't care if they bought it 25 days ago. That's not my business. And I don't care if they're making a nice profit. What I do care is it going to work for me? Are the terms going to work for me? Is the price and the monthly payment going to work for me? That's all I care about. It's irrelevant what they paid, in my opinion. There will be those that'll argue with that, because they'll look at what they paid. Of course, they have no idea what happened to the house after they bought it. They don't know what they spent on it. So what they paid for it is a bad tool to use to measure what you're going to pay. And remember, when we talk to sellers, we don't make offers. They make us offers. They make up because we ask them the questions that lead them to make us, oh, what's the least you will take? Is that the best you can do? We usually buy with nothing down, okay? I assume you're okay if I make your payment till we pay you off in full. When you ask the right questions, you'll get the right answers to some, and those are the ones you want to work with. I don't go online and do anything until I've called the seller and I find out there's a reason to go look up more information, because we call those time wasters, and that's what a lot of people want to do. Spend all their time on the internet collecting facts on houses they're never going to buy. That will not make you any money. Go ahead, John.
All right, Ron. That's all the questions this week.
That's all there is?
Yep.
That's it? Okay, you guys need to submit more questions here. I was on a roll. I was getting just warmed up. All right, I'll see you next week.